And welcome back to another spectacular episode of the Amazin Citi. It's Antonio Slater and it's Jack Ramsey. We have some good stuff. We have some bad stuff to talk about. We have some fun news. We have some not good news. Let's just get right into it with some of the bad news. So here's the thing, guys. We had a full episode recorded.
It was a good one too.
It was a good one. It was a doozy.
That was a good one.
I mean, we made some good points. We
Points
were
made.
It.
Scenes were good. Good scenes.
Well, were the scenes good?
For ourselves.
Yeah.
And our brand, yeah.
For sure. We had a full thing done, recorded, ready to go. Then, one morning, I get a text from Jack. The file is simply not on my computer. So
that's a direct quote.
It's yeah. So
tough scenes.
The scenes were tough.
Tough scenes.
Yeah. So here we are. Instead of like the 11th when we recorded it, here we are on January 19th now. And Carlos Correa is still not a Met. And instead, he is a very proud Minnesota Twin. And he has said some things about the Mets organization. Scott Boras said some things about the Mets organization. Whether you want to believe it all or not, I can't believe everything that Scott Boras says because it's Scott Boras. If you believe everything he says by now, I have all I can say to you is look yourself in the mirror and say, what are you doing to yourself? You can't believe everything that Scott Boras is saying. However, the one thing that I do believe that is rather troubling is that the Mets use the same specialist as the Giants. Now, here's my problem, Jack. Here's my qualm with this situation. You want the guy. You as the owner, you say to the New York Post, you needed one thing to put you over the top, and this is the guy. Now you have him. You see the issues that happened in San Francisco. So why go to the same specialist that flagged the physical so severely in the first place as the Giants? Why not have different independent people that might say, hey, there's a problem here, maybe a little bit down the road, but nothing to kind of completely axe the deal for lack of a better term, because you went from 12 to 315 to only guaranteeing 6 for 157. Why go to that same guy? That's my problem.
I understand going to the same guy. I get it. You want to know what he thinks is wrong. I mean, if you're car shopping,
right,
and you got a guy that's like, look, man, do not get this one. It's a piece of shit. It's gonna break down. You want to go to him and know why. You're gonna want to go to that salesman and ask him why. Why is it a piece of shit? Why is it going to break down? What's wrong with it? What's going to cause that? Like, what are the odds that actually happens?
Yeah. And we'll never know the full details of the physical. That'll never happen.
No, and we'll never know the full details of negotiations. I'm sure we won't even know half of it.
Of course not.
We just know terms that were exchanged. But it seems that the problem arose when it came to Boras and Correa and their side presented multiple doctors for the Mets to go to.
Right.
Who Boras said knew Correa well, the surgeon that performed the surgery on Correa's ankle, et cetera, et cetera. But it seemed as though the fear then sank in for the Mets that, well, these guys are going to be biased. These guys are going to want Correa's best interests and not care about our best interest. And that seems to be kind of what tipped the iceberg that eventually, capsized. It seems as though the fear for the Mets was, well, doctors A, B, and C, Boras is giving them to us. They're just going to say what Boras wants them to say. They're not going to come to us and be like, no, that ankle is as put together as a used Toyota RAV4. I understand the worry, but then I think on the Mets side, you have to go seek out a second opinion. Right. And it was said that the Mets didn't. they were willing to take the opinion of this one doctor and run with it.
I
Now,
guess
whether or
that's my
not
bigger
Mets
problem is that
doctors,
they only went to that one guy and not. If you don't want to go to any guys that solely Boris is recommending, I understand that because obviously, like you said, they're going to have the best interest of Scott Boras and Carlos Correa, not the New York Mets. But why not go to 3 doctors? One from your side, one from their side, and an independent guy. See what all 3 say at that point.
right? And it was just weird and upsetting and confusing to see that they only went to the one.
Yeah.
Obviously you would expect them to fail him again. If you go to the same doctor, you're going to get the same result that happened a week ago. That's just a given. That's a given. Now, the case could have been the Mets took the details and the opinion from this doctor, ran it back to their team. And while the Mets probably don't have an ankle orthopedist on payroll, you have a team of doctors. It's possible that the polarity from that team of doctors was that they believe the ankle is bad. It's in poor condition and it will age poorly.
Right.
That's always possible. It's very possible that the Mets took the opinion of this one specialist and took it to their team of doctors and basically said, look, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
But it's to read straight up, the Mets went to the same specialist. Unless he's like the only ankle specialist that's willing to look at a baseball player, it's confusing. It is confusing. And I don't understand the notion of, oh, well, this is a Boris talking point. This is a Boris talking point. Because Scott Boras needs Steve Cohen.
Yeah.
That is an undeniable truth. He's got the money. Boras has the players. They're a marriage made in heaven. Obviously, it's going to be rocky and tumultuous. The Mets have given a Boras client the highest AAV in baseball history. The Mets have now also had 2 deals fall through with Boras guys due to medicals.
Right.
And that's somewhat makes you question the process of negotiations leading up to the agreements and the medicals. How much of these medicals are really being shared beforehand? Obviously the draft situation is different from the free agent situation, but it still begs the question of what's going on.
Yeah.
Because this is now between Kumar Rocker and Carlos Correa. These are 2 deals that have just completely fallen apart because of medicals. And for whatever reason that may be. It's in my opinion, it's truly fascinating. And it's just tough to kind of wrap your head around.
Like on one hand, you kind of want to credit the Mets for going through the due process and really having the proper due diligence to check every single box before you sign or draft a guy.
And then standing their ground in the end.
Exactly. But there's another thing which is like, even not really with Kumar Rocker, because when you kind of break everything down, you really realize there were some serious problems with those medicals. So you can kind of understand that.
Yeah, I mean, Kumar is the whole reason I ever came on this podcast in the first place.
Yeah. So, look what it's led to.
No, but I mean, like there were serious concerns with Kumar. But this is now 2 deals that have reportedly the money had been agreed to, the money terms. The Mets were going to give Kumar Rocker a $6 million signing bonus. That was agreed to. The gentleman's agreement.
One of the biggest ever, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think one of the biggest handed out by the Mets.
Right.
It might have been a franchise record.
Yeah.
Because they're not picking in the top 5 often.
Yeah.
So Kumar was an exceptionally high pick for them coming off the 2020 season. I think he was 10th, something like that.
That sounds about right. 10th or 11th in that area.
Right. But they usually pick around like between 8 and 9, and then to like the 15, 16, 17. Kelnick was probably the highest pick they've had in a long time.
He was what, 6th?
6th. Like Conforto was 10th, 8th, something like that.
I want to say 8th. Either way.
Either way. This is now twice now where the terms have been leaked and it came out that it's agreed to. The Mets have had an issue with the Boras Medical. They have tried to lower the money. I reported, probably a year and a half ago that the Mets had offered Kumar Rocker $5 million after the agreement was 6. They said, no, we're going to take it down to 5. That's what we feel comfortable with after the medicals. Scott Boras said, "I'm going to walk away."
Mm-hmm.
The Mets said, "Our offer's $5 million." Scott walked away. Kumar is now a Texas Ranger after being the third overall pick.
Yeah.
The Mets had their deal with Carlos Correa, $315 million.
12 for 315.
12 for 315. They say, "We'll offer you half of that." 6 for 157. Scott says, "I am going to walk away." The Nets say, "We are not going to change our offer." Both sides walk away. There's twice now where these staring matches just have no one blinked.
Yeah,
No one
let's not
blinked.
pretend it's going to sour the relationship between the Mets and Scott Boras, or Steve Cohen and Scott Boras, because if anything, you would think the relationship between Boras and the Giants would sour. 24 hours after the Correa deal fell through, they signed Conforto, who's, by the way, a Scott Boras client. So,
I mean, the Mets have handed out, this is like 2 years in a row, the Mets have given a very notable contract to a Scott Boras client, considering they signed Brandon Nimmo for 162
yeah,
a couple weeks before.
you know who else is a Boras guy? I'm pretty sure.
Max Scherzer.
Not even that. Manny Machado, I'm pretty sure, is Scott Boras. Manny Machado will be a free agent next year. Manny Machado
will not be a New York Met.
I don't know. Listen, it's definitely possible.
If they whiff on Ohtani, maybe.
That's my point. If they don't get Ohtani, if they don't get Ohtani, they're getting Machado. If they don't get Machado, they're getting Ohtani. I think that's not set in stone because there's no sure things like that in baseball. But it would increase the odds one way or the other.
Yeah, no, it definitely would. And it's fun to sit here and think about, like, oh yeah, well, if you don't get Ohtani, just fuck it, get Machado.
How great is this?
Like it's no big deal.
Right.
Like, look, if Duncan's really out of caramel, I'll get hazelnut. It's fine. But it's also like, that's nuts. That's in the grand scheme of things, and just where we've been before, that is nuts. And it's a great time to be a Mets fan, regardless of Carlos Correa.
Right. Like,
which
not to skip ahead on our quote unquote rundown of things to talk about.
We never stick to the rundown.
We never do. Tommy Pham, someone complained about this being a Wilpon move. Do you understand what the Wilpons would have done this offseason? They would have signed Tommy Pham, made him the biggest fucking free agent signing of the season. He'd be batting third every day. You wouldn't have Francisco Lindor. Pete Alonso would be traded or still in freaking AAA at this point. Brendan Nimmo, sayonara. They bring back Daryl Siciliani before they re-sign him. The conversation we'd be having with the New York Mets would not be these if the Wilpons were still in place. I'll even be honest here. If the Wilpons were still in place, this podcast probably doesn't exist. So, I mean, I don't know what we're talking about, guy.
No, and I mean,
for so many reasons, this is not a Wilpon move. Making Tommy Pham your fifth outfielder, maybe your second or third guy off the bench, is not a Wilpon move.
They would have never signed Marte last winter. They would have, even if they, let's say in a world where they don't have Marte and they still trade for Tyler Naquin, they bring Naquin back, they bring in Pham. Nimmo, they probably re-sign because he's a good guy everyone loves. He gets butts in seats.
They'd re-sign Conforto after the year off.
Yeah, they try and bring Conforto back, bring Syndergaard back.
Yeah. They wouldn't bring back Diaz. They wouldn't be signing Scherzer. They wouldn't sign Verlander. They wouldn't get Kodai Senga.
They would have traded Diaz.
Jose Quintana would have been your number 2 starter.
They would have traded Diaz after 2021.
Yes.
They would have done the guy with 1 year of control, you're not re-signing, ship him out of town.
Yes. Without question.
Without any question. But we talk about Tommy Pham. You bring him up. I was reading the Fangraphs article on him today.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember off the top of my head who wrote it. The lead in was some of the best writing I've ever read. And mind you, I've read some very good writing.
Mm-hmm.
I've interviewed Jason Stark.
Yourself.
Thank you. Actually, a little personal brag. I'm now going to be writing at Mets Legends.
There you go.
Doing some prospect writing.
Love that.
But I've interviewed Jason Stark, Tim Kirchin. Those of you who have not connected any dots by now, my dad worked at ESPN for 25 years. I met plenty of great writers.
Right.
Sometimes Jeff Passon's in my DMs and we're just shooting the shit, man.
No big
I've
deal.
read some great writers. This is from Michael Bauman.
We're doing some little excerpt here.
Tommy Pham has only played in 9 major league seasons, securing a little more than 7.5 seasons worth of service time. Feels like it should be more. This man has drifted to so many ports, made headlines for conduct meritorious, ignoble, and points in between. He has lived and died 100 times in a baseball uniform, and every one of those lives has been fascinating. Pham is as close as you'll get among millennials to one of those old-timey baseball players with an unbelievable backstory, like Dazzy Vance, Perky Mike Donlin. Now he's a New York Met signed to a $6 million deal. I'll leave the fantasy football jokes aside, but I will mention Andy Martino's tweet, as noted before the news broke, to which Martino says, yes, Tommy Pham slapped the man because of fantasy football. Mind you, this is fucking insane.
Yeah.
The fact that
this is a real thing.
This is a real thing said by someone who works for a network that represents the Mets. But the Mets did back work on him, and that turned up intel that he's a very well-liked teammate and a good clubhouse presence.
Here's my thought on Tommy Pham. Yeah, to quote Andy Martino, yeah, he slapped a guy in the face over fantasy football.
I would too, to be fair, but I'm also not a professional baseball player.
I mean, hearing how much the buying for that league was, I can kind of understand.
A couple million, right?
It was like 10 grand. But like,
why did I think
this has been my thought. Not everyone on a team needs to be buddy and best friends. That happened a couple years ago when they didn't want to trade anyone at the deadline, aka JD Davis, so the team chemistry stayed intact. How'd that work out?
Yeah, Zach Scott was, well, granted, he might have been drunk when he said this. We don't know anymore. But Zach Scott, disgraced New York Mets general manager, but somehow not even the most disgraced New York Mets general manager of that calendar year.
Right.
He said that he didn't want to alter the team chemistry.
Yeah.
The guys all really got along.
So he didn't want to trade Dom or JD Davis.
Which is fine and dandy.
Sure.
You want the guys to get along. Ideally, you don't want your $341 million shortstop choking out your all-star second baseman.
Typically.
You don't want that.
No.
You don't want a starting pitcher who just does not seem to give a shit about anyone on the team. And if you want to go even more tinfoil hat, you have the rumors of the fact that Syndergaard hated Lindor. And there are the rumors of, some people speculate that just based on how he was shown on TV, Chris Bassett didn't seem to entirely fit in.
Right.
Whatever it may be. If you're not winning games, what the fuck are we doing here?
And that's my point. Like, Tommy Pham is going to help this team win games. And I feel like every team needs at least one guy that's got some fuck you in him. Tommy Pham, the name on his jersey might as well say fuck you. I love Tommy Pham.
I think
he's not going to be a big clubhouse guy.
He's probably an asshole.
He probably is an asshole.
I mean, it's the same guy who collided with Sungmin Kim, or who was it? Whoever was playing shortstop for the Padres that day, but it wasn't Tatis.
Probably Ha-Seong Kim.
Yeah, probably Ha-Seong Kim. He collides with Ha-Seong Kim in short left field, and he starts bitching Kim out in the dugout.
I remember this.
And Kim's clearly concussed.
Yeah.
And Pham is laying into him, and I'm watching. I'm like, wow, what a dick.
Like, let's if we can break it down a little bit.
Who's going to be the first guy on the top step if someone comes high and tight?
Took the words out of my mouth. Took them out.
And the Mets have been getting in these brush ups a little bit more than people than we're used to.
Which I like. Listen, I love Pete.
Ever since Drew Gagnon went up and in on Ian Desmond, they've had a couple.
I love Pete Alonso. We know this. Hopefully, he's another Met for life. But sometimes he screams fake tough guy. You know who's not a fake tough guy? Tommy Pham. You're not a fake tough guy who's gotten stabbed twice. This man has been stabbed twice in his life. That's not fake tough guy. This guy's got fuck you written all over him. A team needs a guy like this. And again, he hits lefties. He matches a profile that Billy Epler said, good decision makers at the plate. He doesn't chase much. He's in the top 98th percentile in terms of chase rate. Doesn't strike out as much. He doesn't strike out as much as, say, I don't know, a Trey Mancini or an Adam Duvall or any other of the fourth outfielders that are available on the market.
Well, in those two names, well, I'll bring up three names. You had McCutchen, you had Duvall.
I would have loved McCutchen, but I love the story there. I love it.
You had McCutchen, you had Duvall, you had Mancini. Mancini's not an outfielder. He's not an outfielder anymore.
No.
McCutchen's clearly going home for one more year.
And then right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, not the sunset, maybe into the Allegheny. But and Duvall is probably going to play every day and hit fifth in Boston.
Right. He's not going to do that here.
And that says more about the state Boston is in than the ability of Adam Duvall.
Yes.
Not taking anything away from him.
Sure.
But that says far more about where Boston's at. The Mets were trying to convince a starting center fielder to play fourth outfielder.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't going to get McCutchen if it was clear he was going to go home, and they offered him more money, reportedly.
Yeah.
And Mancini wasn't a fit.
Right.
Really just left you with Tommy Pham for like throwing money at Michael A. Taylor. Or not throwing money, throwing prospects at Kansas City for Michael A. Taylor, which is not entirely something you want to do.
Yeah, I'll take my chance with Tommy Pham. One of my friends like, oh, I bet Adam Duvall is a better year than Tommy Pham.
No shit.
Better. He better.
He will, because he's a better player, which is why he will be an everyday center fielder in Boston. He might hit 40 tanks this year.
Nah, I don't know about that.
It's not 30, that good. He was doing like 35 to 38 most years.
Yeah, but then he's gotten hurt a lot.
Stays healthy, he can do 38, 40.
And he strikes out a lot.
Two true outcomes, dingers and Ks.
Yeah. So that's my 2 cents. And listen.
Well, we can go to another more topic of NL Central outfielders.
I was getting there. I'm like, listen, Tommy Pham doesn't necessarily mean your outfield is set.
If there's one big move left in the market, it's Brian Reynolds.
That's it. And I can tell you, I have on pretty firm ground from a very reliable individual.
Are we breaking news in the pod?
Let's break some news here. Listen, you're typically the one in the business of us two breaking news here. I like to have a little bit of my share here. I want to eat my cake with this one here. I can say the Mets have made an offer for Brian Reynolds. I do not know who has been involved. I do not know how many players are involved. All I know is that names have been exchanged. I know as well the Mets want a reliever. So maybe they go out. Maybe they don't get Brian Reynolds. Maybe they said, you know what? We made this offer. It didn't work out. Ergo, here comes Tommy Pham.
You telling me they can try and start a package here?
That's what I'm saying.
Brian Reynolds and David Bednar?
I'm not saying David Bednar, but if you want a reliever from Pittsburgh, you probably want David Bednar.
Yeah, that's the one. That's one fucker you want in that bullpen.
Unless you're somehow turning Mitch Keller into a reliever, and I doubt that's going to happen because he actually had a decent second half as a starter last year. You're going after David Bednar. So, that's where we're at. Just because they signed Tommy Pham does not mean this offseason is done. The word that Cohen and Epler and everyone in the organization has said from the get-go, the key word has always been opportunistic. They're opportunistic. They swooped in and tried to get Correa. For a while, it looked like they were going to get Correa. Then, didn't happen. But with the Ottavino and the Narvaez introductions, they said the words again. Opportunistic. So if they see a chance that say, you know what, maybe we didn't have the original best offer for Reynolds, but they said, the Pirates said, you know, we like this player, and that player. Maybe it gets done.
Look, and I got destroyed for this.
I'm not saying it's going to get done.
But I'm going to say it again.
By all means.
If the Mets are calling Pittsburgh on Brian Reynolds, 3 years of control, as we have pointed out, identical numbers to Carlos
3 years of
Correa.
control past this year.
Right.
I believe.
Pittsburgh asks for Francisco Alvarez. I am not nearly as hesitant to say no as some people would be. And I will tell you why.
Tell me.
And Jarrett Seidler from Baseball Prospectus made this point today when I asked him. He was doing Q&A. I asked him, what's the worst case scenario for a Francisco Alvarez? And he made the point, and I think this is something that's in the minds of a lot of people in prospect circles and front offices, just evaluators when looking at Francisco Alvarez, is if he can't stick behind the plate, you might just be looking at a better version of a Blake Swihart, a Miguel Montero, a dude who can mash, but you cannot put him anywhere.
Right.
And in that scenario, is a Gucci Blake Swihart really stopping you from Brian Reynolds?
Especially when you have Parada waiting as well.
And that's my next point is Kevin Parada is a better prospect than people realize.
Yeah.
Kevin Parada might be the most sure bet in the Mets farm system right now. Kevin Parada will probably have, at worst, a solid 10-year career.
Because now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when Parada was drafted, his profile was the defense was already better than Alvarez's development right now. And he has like a pretty damn near major league ready bat.
He has very good bat to ball skills. You know, the one thing, the big challenge coming from no matter what level of college ball you're at to the minor leagues will always be pitch recognition and approach. You know, I was talking about today. You know, someone pointed out, hey, Ronnie Mauricio isn't on any top 100 list right now. Why do you think that is? His approach sucks. His eye is not great. He's the same player he was 3 years ago.
Right.
When he was at number 60 on these lists.
Yep.
And the caveat was if he can just work on the eye and work on his approach, he'll be shooting up these lists. He hasn't done either. So now he's sliding back down. He's not even on Baseball Prospectus list or Baseball America's list.
Right.
Baseball Prospectus, their list comes out, I think tomorrow or sometime soon. But he's not on it. He's not on Baseball America's list. He's sliding down Mets top 10 lists.
Right.
He will probably, he's not even the best shortstop prospect in the system anymore. Jet Williams is a clear-cut better prospect.
Right.
If Jet's played like 12 pro games.
Yeah.
But back to Parada, pitch recognition and approach will be a big thing. Power's there, the bat's there. I trust the defense will be there. The floor is a lot higher than Alvarez because there isn't really a question of, well, what if the glove doesn't stick for Parada?
Right.
You know, because it's not nearly as. The problem with Alvarez has always been the glove has been trailing the bat by so far.
Right.
I mean, there were some evaluators who thought his bat was ready for the big leagues when he was in St. Lucie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his bat has been big league ready for a long time, which is what makes him such a freak. You know, like a unicorn, basically.
His ceiling is off the charts.
But his floor is not nearly as high as people think it is.
Right.
And you will hear the sentiment when you read the lists, when you talk to evaluators. And the reason he's like at number 9, number 10, number 5, number 1 on MLB Pipeline, the ceiling is insane. The ceiling is one of the best offensive catchers in baseball history.
Yeah.
That is the ceiling.
But
I've the floor is a guy who does 5 years, 6 years behind the dish, becomes a DH and fades out with a couple hundred career homers. Nothing crazy.
I've seen a lot of Mike Piazza comparisons, which is pretty lazy just because it's the organization that, you know, it's the Mets. That's why they go to right to him. But it's also the hitting profile, which also kind of matches the defensive profile. I love Mike Piazza, one of my favorite players of all time. He wasn't great defensively. That's always what, quote unquote, held him back. But he is the greatest hitting catcher in the history of Major League Baseball. But like you said, there's also some the floor. When I look at what I see with Alvarez, I see a guy that could very much have a career almost like Salvador Perez, where 1 year he can just explode, lead the league in home runs, have just great from beginning of the year to the end of the year, but he could also have years where he's not as great. It's possible.
I'm going to strongly disagree with you there.
Okay.
And I will in the sense that I will never worry about the bat.
I'm not worried about the bat.
I would be shocked if the bat ever gives us a year under 25 homers. Unless he's just hurt or old.
Right.
Or he just sucks at the bigs. But for as long as he is as a regular in the major leagues, I will never worry about the bat.
Mm-hmm.
But it's possible that, as Jarrett pointed out, and I think it's a great observation by him, if the glove cannot get there and he has too much of a liability behind the plate to continue to run out, you're just looking at a pretty good DH for 10 to 15 years. And a pretty good DH for 10 to 15 years is not something that's going to stop you from Brian Reynolds.
No.
You know, and there's a lot of risk factor to a prospect like Alvarez, where you look at Beatty, and Brett Beatty's much more of a sure thing.
Beatty has a higher floor. Maybe a lower ceiling, but a higher floor.
No, I mean, what?
Got some thunder going on.
Beatty's floor is probably starting third baseman for 10-ish years. 5 to 10 years as a starting third baseman, couple wins per year, whatever. The Steamer 600 projections that came out from Fangraphs for 600 plate appearances for Beatty next year was about 3.5 win players, 750, 775 OPS, 25 homers. You take that time and time again from Brett Beatty, especially for next year. So I think that kind of leads us into our next conversation of, just kind of where the Mets prospects are at as a whole. As we see all these lists come out. The Mets have 2 of the top 3 catching prospects in baseball, according to...
It's a good problem to have.
Right, according to MLB Pipeline, with Francisco Alvarez at number 1, Diego Cartaya with the Dodgers at number 2, Kevin Parada at number 3. By Baseball America, they have 6 top 100 prospects. Alvarez at 9. Kodai Senga, technically a prospect, 16.
I mean, yeah.
By technicality. Brett Beatty at 33. Kevin Parada at 50. Alex Ramirez 92. Jet the Met 98. First time you've seen Jet on a top 100 list.
Yeah. Not surprising about it, though.
No, but it's interesting, You're betting on a powerful 5'8" build. But they note in their write-up that this is the way baseball is going.
Yeah.
Shorter guys with stronger frames. So the days of the 6'4" third baseman might be gone.
You don't see many of those anymore.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Even the 6'2", I think Arenado's a 6'2", 6'3". Those days might be starting to fade out.
I don't even know if he's 6'2".
Because Jackson Hollidays, I think, is a relatively short guy.
Oh, he is 6'2". He's 6'2" on the nose.
Yeah, there you go. Jet the Met's a pretty short guy. And it's interesting because it also makes you question, where is he going to be long term?
Correa 6'4".
Right, you're not going to see a lot of those based on the way profiling players is going.
Yeah. I mean, I know he's a little bit older, but even a guy like Jose Ramirez, he's only 5'9".
Yeah. No, he's a shorter guy. And obviously the obvious Altuve.
Well, he's 5'2". He's still an anomaly. That I'm not counting that one.
But I think you made a great point in terms of having 2 of the 3 best catching prospects in baseball. That is a good problem to have. Because if
especially the catcher's position. It's one thing to have
position in baseball.
Yeah, it's one thing to have 3 of the top 5, say, shortstops prospects in baseball.
Because they move off this position all the time.
Right. Look at the catching position. Look at them. Who's the top 2 in baseball are pretty clear cut with JT Realmuto and Will Smith. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot.
Kind of. It's an incredible crapshoot. It is. Yeah. No,
the catcher position is thin, especially one that can play on both sides of the ball defensively and offensively. So if you have two of the best in the sport, and if you can eventually develop that top guy to be a even average defender, ladies and gentlemen, you're gonna have it's a good thing to have.
And here's another thing: is there a minimal full-time starting catchers in baseball now? Like guys who
Again,
catch every day.
there's a top two, and then after that, it's a crapshoot.
Well, I'm just saying, guys that catch every day.
Yeah,
There were 5 that qualified for the batting title last year. 5
right.
catchers. JT Realmuto had a 6.5 F4.
Yeah.
Will Smith had a 5.1.
Mm-hmm.
Or sorry,
Was Adley third for
Sean
WAR and
Murphy
catchers?
had a 5.1. Sean Murphy was great last year.
It's a good player.
Will Smith had a 3.9. Alejandro Kirk had a 3.8. There was
Where was
one.
Adley?
Well, Adley didn't qualify for the batting title or any of that. I'm
Right.
talking about guys who caught enough last year to qualify for the batting title.
Yeah.
The 5th was MJ Melendez in Kansas City with a negative 0.2 F4. And I'm not like taking some crazy sample size. These are qualified batters.
Yeah.
That also goes to show you how minimally catchers are playing every day.
Yeah.
You know, the days of one guy catches 6 games a week, the other guy catches 1, they're gone.
Yeah, and to kind of really put this in perspective, to qualify for the batting title, you need to have at least like 480 at bats, closer to 500 at bats.
It's 3.1 a game.
Yeah. So, like you said, this is not a small sample size.
No, and here,
that's a full body of work.
I've shrunk it down to 350 plate appearances, or 300. Adley hit a 5.3. Cal Raleigh had a 4.2. Darno had a 3.9. Jose Trevino a 3.7. Wilson Contreras a 3.3. Jonah Heim 2.8. William Contreras a 2.4. But Jonah Heim had a weighted runs created of 99.
Mm-hmm.
Jose Trevino a 91.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Murphy had a F4 of 5.1 and the weighted runs created of 122. 22% above league average. That's good. But that's 5 wins?
Yeah.
It also just goes to show you just how bad catching is in baseball. Yep. I'll give you a 1-win player. Let's see if I can pull one up. 0.9 wins. 239, 276, 324. It's a 74 weighted ones created plus. 4.5 walks per 9, 24.3 K per 9. His isolated slugging, 0.85. His name? Tomas Nido. He was a 0.9 F4 last year.
Yeah.
I mean, even exactly 0 was Max Stassi.
Congrats on getting the bag, by the way.
Oh, yes, sir. King. Max Stassi, 0.0 wins above replacement, a 63 rated runs created plus. Struck out 29.9% of the time. So that makes him he's no better than a replacement player.
0 Where's our new starting catcher Omar Narvaez at?
On that list?
Baseball Reference has him at a 0.2 WAR.
Wasn't he hurt a lot of last year?
Yeah. He only had 260 at bats.
Yeah, then he didn't hit the plate appearances threshold.
No, plate appearance he had 296.
Oh damn, he just missed it.
Yeah,
shrunk it down to 250. .1, 206, 292, 305. But that also shows you the emphasis on defense.
Right.
Is that he had that crappy of an offensive year, but still posted more than a full win above replacement at only 296 plate appearances.
Yep.
Prorate that to a full season. Take 500 plate appearances. You're looking at like a 1.7, 1.8 wins above replacement, which is fine. But that's where we're at with catching.
Yeah.
It's bad.
It's not good.
Tough scenes. Brutal scenes. But this is just where catching in baseball is at.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent. And it's not, I really don't think it's going to change. I just think if you're looking at it, it's the rich become richer in the Dodgers with Cartaya. you have good catchers in baseball.
Especially as the importance of framing kind of continue to die out.
Being able to hit behind the plate is going to be hugely important. Hit and throw out runners. But the Reds are going to get richer than the Dodgers. The Mets have two of them on the way. You look at the Pirates where you have Harry Ford and Andy Rodriguez.
Yep.
So it's even 250 plate appearances. Only 11 catchers posted wins above replacement of 2.4 or better.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, let's see if my page wants to finish loading. Let's see where this wants to finish loading. 37 plated catchers reached this threshold for plate appearances. 37. And mind you, again, Tomas Nido, 1.1 F4 or 0.9. Has as awful of an offensive year as he had. So being able to, especially going forward, and I've seen the ABS work, it's going to eliminate most need for framing.
Yeah.
But it puts a bigger emphasis, a larger emphasis on calling a good game, throwing out runners, being able to handle a pitching staff.
Absolutely.
So having a polished prospect like Parada and two prospects that can hit like Alvarez and Parada will do wonders for the Mets.
Oh, yeah. And if
it
turns out one's your franchise catcher, guess who just became one of the best trade chips in all of baseball?
Whichever the other one is.
Exactly.
No, and I think Parada will probably progress quicker than people think.
Yeah.
He's a very polished college prospect. So a lot of teams still take their time with the college guys when they come in as juniors. They're still like 20, 21. I'm a junior in school right now, and I'm 20. Like, it's a lot of teams still take their time.
Of course.
But this guy will start in St. Lucie and be in Brooklyn by the end of the year, possibly even Binghamton if everything goes well.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's probably on that like Mike Vassell track in terms of timing. Probably like late May, he gets promotion to Brooklyn. He'll go tear up Brooklyn, and shit, if he tears up Brooklyn, he might just see time and might see some time in Binghamton at the end of the year.
Why not?
No, I mean exactly at that point, it's why not? Like, what are you holding back for?
Yeah,
it's not like he's Alex Ramirez where he's 18 doing what he's doing, so you can take your time and fine tune everything.
Right.
But he's coming out. He came out the draft immediately one of the best college prospects, one of the best catching prospects in baseball.
Yeah.
It took him no time. He put
Without
pen to paper, got his bag, and prospect.
Was he the second catcher taken in that draft?
I think the first.
I thought he was the same year as Harry Ford.
I believe Harry Ford's the year before.
Oh, okay.
Because the Pirates took middle infielder Tremar
Johnson. Is that
Tremar Johnson? Yeah, the Pirates took Tremar Johnson. No, this was the Drew Jones Jackson Holiday draft.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, no, that was because the Nats had been tied so heavily to Parada at 5, and they took Elijah Green instead.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Kevin Parada was the 6th ranked overall prospect in that draft, too.
No, I mean they got a steal.
Oh yeah.
I don't think anyone's going to try and argue that they didn't. They really did get a steal at 11.
Yeah.
And then to turn around later and get a good long-term developmental prospect in Jet. And then your second round pick is Blade Tidwell, who's probably a first-round talent. That's a great cap on the last Thanos Bermuda draft. And you were saying all the time, like people were getting into prospects and into the draft when the Mets had 2 first-round picks.
Oh yeah.
they're probably once again going to have 5 picks in the first 100 thanks to Chris Bassett leaving and DeGrom leaving. And then their third round pick, Brandon Sprout from the Gators, he never signed. They'll get a pick for him. There'll be another spring of hyping up the draft.
And
that's good
this
for
is an
baseball.
organization that is drafted very well the past few years. I mean, even historically, going back the past better part of a decade, they've drafted well.
I put it out not too long ago. Since Thanos and Tremuta started drafting, the year they took Gavin Caccini in the first round, they've drafted very well.
Yeah.
It's just a question of development, and you never know what's going to happen to guys once you trade them. You don't the perfect case has always been Justin Turner. He wanted to change one thing about his swing. The team told him no.
Yeah.
He went and found a team who said yes.
And it's worked out very well.
And it's made him into a phenomenal career.
Yeah. He won't be a Hall of Famer, but he will be on Hall of Fame ballots.
He will receive votes.
Yeah.
Maybe just on that alone. Just how late of a bloomer he was.
Yeah.
And how strong of a career he had and being an incredibly clutch playoff performer.
Oh yeah.
But they've drafted very well. And they've had guys on great projecting paths before they get traded away.
Mm-hmm.
People were clamoring for Anthony Kay.
Oh,
2019. Yeah. Bat. The Yukon kid from Long Island. Mets prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets some Stroman and he falls off with the Blue Jays, who notoriously can't develop pitchers. What's Pearson been up to since being one of the best prospects in baseball? Nate Pearson. But it's
well, he's another one that can't throw 5 pitches without tearing something in his arm. I feel bad for the kid.
No, yeah. And Alek Manoah is the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, look at the Reds. What pitching are they churning out? Nothing really.
I mean,
hopefully Hunter
they've traded it all away.
Right. But
they traded Sonny Gray, they traded Luis Castillo, they traded Tyler Mahle.
But Justin Dunn, he was projecting well in the Mets system, still doing reasonably well in Seattle, goes to Cincinnati in the Suarez Winker trade, and nothing's really come from in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Jared Kelenic.
Woods Richardson is another one. Jared Kelenic is the prime example.
Jared Kelenic is a prime example of he looks like the next shit in the Mets system. Even in the Mariners system, he looks like the next shit. He just can't make it happen at the big league level. Yeah, and the Mariners rushed him. And that, again, player development systems matter.
Because I just feel like
and this
Seattle,
is the one thing.
Seattle, they saw the storyline, and I just feel like lefty, young kid, pretty swing, top prospect, power hitter, all the tools, center fielder. They're trying to make the next Ken Griffey Jr.
The one thing that I think the majority of casual fans will never understand is the importance of player development systems.
Mm-hmm.
Because every team doesn't just take a 34th round pick and turn him into one of the premier setup men in baseball.
Right.
Not every team can just take the large, slow-bodied SEC first baseman and turn him into the premier power-hitting first baseman in baseball.
Not every team could take a 9th round pick out of Stetson, who played shortstop for a majority of his college career, and turn him into a Hall of Famer.
Or take a golfer out of California and turn him into a batting
champ.
The Mets have had quite a few player development successes.
Yeah.
And I think one thing the casual fan will never get is you'll look at Kelenic, you'll look at Dunn, you'll look at Kay. I think Woods Richardson will do fine in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're trending in the right direction in terms of developing pitching. I really think Joe Ryan will be a stud for them.
He's very good.
And I think Woods Richardson will not be very far behind. They just should put SWR in the back of his jersey instead of the whole last name. But he's one of those guys. But this group of guys as a whole, they go to systems that aren't notoriously well renowned.
Yeah.
And they falter. But then you look at a team like Pittsburgh, where an emphasis is being put on player development at the lower levels. And you have a Andy Rodriguez.
They're churning out some
you
good
just
players.
kind of throw into a trade that you didn't really have to be in the first place.
Yeah.
And now he's the 23rd best prospect in baseball, according to Baseball America.
And it's like you said, it's at the lower levels. When they acquired Brian Reynolds from San Francisco for Andrew McCutchen, they acquired him when he was in single A. They developed Brian Hayes into one of the better third basemen in baseball, especially defensively.
O'Neal Cruz
was a nobody. He was a throw-in from Houston, if I'm not mistaken. Either Houston or the Dodgers. It may have been the Dodgers. But they acquired him when he was like a 17-year-old international prospect that nobody's heard of.
And this is why, like, I remember getting upset over the Naquin trade in the summer because
you were upset about this.
Jose Acuna. And another Baseball America guy pointed out to me today, if Jose Acuna was still in the Mets system, he's probably one of the better pitching prospects they have, given the success he had last season. It's one thing to be like, oh, it's a prospect, who cares? You're just trying to win now. That's great. You're trying to build organizational sustainability. You know, if Jose Acuna is a legitimate major league starting pitcher, is that worth the rental and the not entirely great experience that was Tyler Naquin? And these are legitimate questions you have to ask yourself as a team that wants to win now and win in the future. If you're a team like the 2015 Mets, where you're like, you're Sandy Alston, you know the ownership's not going to spend this winter to go out and add the finishing touches. You have to manufacture it in the trade market. Then yeah, you can do that if you think that's the piece that puts you over the top, or part of it. That's fine. But if you're a team that's harping on organizational sustainability, and your main reason for the, I'll put it lightly, underwhelming deadline you had was organizational sustainability.
Can I go back to Tommy Pham real quick since we're talking about the deadline? One more great thing about Tommy Pham is that his name isn't Darren Ruff.
Tommy Pham sucks. Then the two easiest spots to improve on at the deadline are the bullpen and the bench, the fourth outfielder. If he sucks, just trade for a new one.
Yeah.
Adam Duvall might be available on the trade market by then. The Red Sox aren't going to be good.
Exactly.
You know, Jurickson Profar might be on the market by then. Trey Mancini
on the market.
might be on the market by then. Who knows? The Pirates might trade McCutchen. Like, it's the Pirates.
I just don't understand why people are so mad about. I don't get it. I don't either. It's just because they don't like the guy.
Well, let's go to.
And again, I know he's a dick, but whatever.
Let's go to some guys everyone loves. Gary. Oh wow. Gary Cohen.
You want to try that one more time?
I had Howard Johnson on the mind.
Yeah.
Gary Cohen, Howard Johnson, Al Leiter, Jay Horowitz,
and Howie.
Howie Rose. Jay Horowitz receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. 5 new inductees into the Mets Hall of Fame. It's very nice to see ownership continuing to preserve and work on the legacy of the organization.
Absolutely.
You know, especially with the passing of Frank Thomas, knowing that he got to go back to the Mets one more time before he passed. You know, there's a sense of relief in that. But that someone like him who is, you know, like he's a statue within the organization.
Sure.
To know that he was able to do
the original
that
Met.
Right. To know that he was able to do that one more time. And that he was able to have the joy he had at Old Timers Day. It's just, you know, you can get on the Mets all you want for money and for players and for coaches, whatever. But it's the things like that in the grand scheme of things are what matters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the fact that it's not an organization that is running from its old players anymore.
Right.
You know, like imagine if like 5 years ago Al Leiter was inducted in the Mets Hall of Fame and he joked that he's still pissed Omar Minaya didn't bring him back. Jeff Wilpon would take that personally. And then he would know, and then he would rescind his invitation to the Mets Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah.
But it's incredible. It's incredible to just think that the ownership cares to the extent that they do.
Yeah.
To put in the time and effort to organize something like Old Timers Day. And we talked about it then, and we're talking about it again. But just again, it goes back to it's a fan. He is a fan. Steve Cohen is a fan. And fans have been clamoring for something like Old Timers Day for a long time. And this is why.
Yeah.
Because even in the passing of Frank Thomas, you know that he got to do that one more time. And we heard all the old timers say how great it was to feel like a part of the organization again. That shouldn't be lost in all this. That's just my 2 cents on it.
No, I think you put it absolutely perfectly. I mean, I can only say so many good things about Steve Cohen, but this is one of the best things that he's done is the importance of recognizing the history from a fan's perspective. You know,
the family of the New York Mets.
Like, especially now, you think about the New York Mets, the first person you think of outside of players is probably Gary Cohen. And then the next one you think about outside of that is probably Howie Rose.
And they're easily interchangeable.
Absolutely. There's a reason why, not just within this fan base, but around baseball, they're both regarded as they're best in their craft. Howie's one of the best radio guys in all of baseball, and Gary Cohen is, come on, guys. He's the best play-by-play guy in the game.
Yeah,
he's number one.
He just won that award.
So I think the Mets and Steve Cohen doing this to recognize that fact and show their appreciation of taking out the time and all these years of putting their passion for this team. This is the best way to acknowledge it. And I think this is just another tick in what has been a phenomenal offseason for this team.
And I think a lot of times people talk about like chapters in the history of a team. Howie and Gary wrote these chapters. If you're thinking of who's putting pen to paper on these chapters, from what, 98, 99 on, Gary Cohen is co-writing these chapters with Howie wrote.
Good, bad, or ugly.
Truly phenomenal.
They are writing these chapters.
And that's one of the phenomenal things about it is, really since the teams have been good, and they've both been there. The first year probably being 98 or 99. That's 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost half of the history of the New York Mets.
Think about all the major calls in Mets history. How many of them are Gary Cohen or Howie Rose?
At least more than half of them.
Yeah, especially in our lifetimes.
There is no Mets for me without Howie or Gary. It's going to be an incredibly sad day when they both move on to other ventures in their lives.
Right.
And to the happily ever after of their lives. But it's, and I even just thinking about it the other day, like, this is the third since I've really started paying since I've come into Mets consciousness, if you will. This will be the third partner for Howie. Josh Lewin, Wayne Randazzo, whoever they bring in now,
right,
will be the third partner for Howie. In the blasphemous possibility that Keith Hernandez and SNY do not work something out, which would be just one last fuck you from the Wilpons.
Yeah, it will be.
But it just, again, it makes you appreciate the unique but undeniable role that these guys have in Mets history.
Right.
I mean, if you're talking about the most important names or faces in Mets history, Gary and Howie are both in the top 10. Oh,
yeah.
I mean, you're talking Seaver, Wright, Piazza, Gooden, Strawberry, Bobby V. You're throwing all these names out that can make you got to set aside 2 spots for Howie and Gary.
Yeah.
These guys aren't just the voice of a generation. They're the voices of generations.
They're voices of The organization.
Let's see. We'll play a little game.
Okay.
What year do you think Gary Cohen started?
No. 97. Shot in the dark, guess.
Let's see. 1989.
Wasn't even a little close.
He started calling Mets games. My father just turned 56. In 1989, Gus Ramsey was a senior at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, where his son, who he had at 35, is now a junior. The son is me. To be a spoiler.
Oh, you're the son?
I know. I hope the last name didn't give it away. When do you think Howie?
Oof, I'm going to say before that.
Well, yeah. God, he's 68 already?
So Gary was, what, 89? 77. I don't know.
Really? 95. But to play the same game, 1995.
That's the year this guy was born.
You're old.
Thanks.
Wow. What are you, 30?
27.
Close enough. There's no difference.
I might as well be 30.
But I mean, so since 1995, we're around 28 years out of the 62 in Mets history. 2023 will be their 62nd season. Yes.
61st.
No.
Because they started in 62.
Yeah, but that counts as season 1.
Okay.
It's our 62nd season. I could be wrong, but neither of us are math kids.
Math is tough.
This isn't a math podcast. We're not nerds. We both have ladies in our lives.
That's right.
But
we both had a lot of concussions too, so they just numbers don't work.
But 62 years of the New York Mets. 28 of them. 28 of them. That's like what, 47, 48%, something like that.
And he has no signs of retiring.
Neither of them do.
He's doing less games, but he's not saying, "Oh, this is the last ride."
I mean, Gary is 64, Howie is 68.
Ugh.
And neither of them are slowing down.
Bless him.
If anything, Gary's just speeding up.
Oh yeah.
It's just incredible. That's all I got for this one. But it's better to end it on a note like that.
Listen, we've talked Correa, we've talked Tommy Pham, we've talked Brian Reynolds, we've talked a lot of things. I think
most important is my new writing home.
Once again, plug it.
I will be doing a feature called Future Mets Legends.
Love it.
For MetsLegends.com, run by my good buddy Rob Pearsall. Met him at Metsmerize when he was one of the managing editors there. Hopefully we'll have some more news coming in the coming weeks. Obviously I'm still a college kid with a part-time job, that I desperately need. Well, it's basically full-time at this rate. What difference is what's the difference between 35 and 40 hours?
Yeah.
But
insurance.
Yeah, basically. I'm an assistant manager at a mom and pop restaurant.
Yeah.
But hopefully I'll be able to do some of the really cool things I was able to do last summer through Metsmerize and Mets Minors. Hopefully I'll be able to do again. Bring you guys some fun, great content from Port St. Lucie. Some irons are in fires there. Try and work that out. But no iron in any fire is greater than Sean Payton to the Denver Broncos. That will happen.
Oh yeah, that's happening.
That's happening. Russell Wilson will be partly saved. He will be a clear step better than mediocre quarterbacks of the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
The Jared Goffs, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
and he will be a fringe top 10 quarterback next year. And Sean Payton will
Don't think it's a hot take.
my football life. That's all I got. Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, okay.
A playoff winner?
Buddy.
Are you full on the Daniel Jones train now?
No, it's too late for that to happen. But here.
Sources are saying he's better than Eli.
Let me tell you something. Someone said that to me in a non-sarcastic fashion. It took everything in my power to not stand up, walk to them, and just clock them. But here's the thing. You have to accept the fact that, listen, Daniel Jones has taken a step this year. There's no question about it. And
I think he's past the point of being a game manager. Or if he is, he's the best one in football.
He's won a playoff game, right? So to win the franchise's first playoff game in 6 years, you have to acknowledge certain things. So I have officially filed my son of a bitch.
Put it in front of your face. No problem.
Hold on now. Stand by. I have filed a quote-unquote Daniel Jones apology form. However, I've made some tweaks where I've added my own subcategory for it instead of the standard or whatever the ones I had there. I don't know if you can read that one that well, especially because it's backwards.
He was actual ass for
a long time, but he won a playoff game. He was actual ass for quite some time. But guess what? He won a playoff game. He went into Minnesota and played the best game of his entire life. I can't take that away from him. I've accepted the fact that he's likely to be my franchise quarterback for the next 3+ years. However, am I necessarily happy about it? Am I over the moon that Daniel Jones will be leading my favorite football team for the next 3 years? Not necessarily.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You bring back Jones. Nice fat contract.
Right.
Say we'll give him the 3 years, $40 million a year, whatever.
Yeah, that's gross, but okay.
That's quarterback money.
I understand.
Saquon walks because you don't overpay running backs.
Now they're keeping him.
No, hold on. He walks.
Okay.
And out of Texas, Bijan Robinson.
Okay, I'm back on board.
Then you take the money you're going to give Saquon. Given that in this scenario, Jones is staying no matter what.
Right.
Can you get him some fucking weapons?
He's already got a Hall of Famer. Isaiah Hodgins is the best player I've ever seen in my entire life.
You get him someone that's even marginally better than Kenny Golladay?
Me?
Me?
You?
Him?
Howie Rose?
All I'm saying is you get him a legit number one receiver, or even just a number two who you can play as number one.
Right.
Like, obviously not him because Sean Payton's going to save the Broncos, but like someone on the level of like a Jerry Jeudy, a Tim Patrick. Or, well, no, Judy's the Broncos number one now. Like a Cortland Sutton, a Tim Patrick, someone on that level who you can go to. Like in
there's a whole lot of talk about trading for DeAndre Hopkins. Whole lot of it.
One of the Giants or the Patriots, man.
And buddy, let me tell you something.
I'll tell you somewhere he's not going to be, and that's Arizona.
You get DeAndre Hopkins on the New York Football Giants, buddy.
No, I'll ask you this. Seeing how he played in New York for the first 4 or 5 years or whatever, and knowing how people felt about Mr. Gettleman, was his
I'm not doing this. No.
Was
Dave Gill can still go. He could suck a fuck for all I care. I'm not doing the revisionist history on Dave Gettleman.
Was his misread of Evan Ingram one of the grossest assessments of talent ever?
Yeah. Dave Gettleman made a lot of mistakes. And you're like, oh, but look at the roster. It's got Dave Gettleman's fingerprints all over it. First of all, shut your mouth. Just stop it. It took a coach of the year and the proper staff to actually find something in Daniel Jones. Dexter Lawrence, he's a freak. Well, I'm not going to take that away from it. But this has nothing to do with Dave Gettleman drafting and signing the right guys. They're only here because Dave Gettleman and his geniuses that he put around him put this team in such a crappy spot cap-wise, he can't get rid of the roster. He was stuck with what they had.
I remember talk before the year of just cut the guys you need to cut and deal with a 1-16, a 2-15. I remember that talk. But I think that makes what Schoen and Dabble are doing even more.
What they've done is incredible.
It won't nearly be as incredible as what Sean Payton does next year.
Sean Payton is a Hall of Fame coach who's going to come into a loaded roster. If he goes in and Denver wins 12 games next year, no one's going to be surprised.
Have you seen their pass rush room? It's not great.
Well, it was until he traded everyone.
If Randy Gregory can get his head out of his ass.
That's a high ask. It's a higher ask than what Pittsburgh wants for Brian Reynolds.
Oh. Well, so back to that's our big news for today.
Yeah, and I did it.
You got me.
But yeah. Again, so, I don't know if anything's going to happen with that.
Will our next episode be breaking down the Brian Reynolds trade?
Oh, buddy, I would love that. I would love nothing more than for us having to need to come back on tomorrow because there's news to talk about.
I cannot come on tomorrow for the fucking life of me.
Okay, so then we'll come back on Sunday because I'm not recording on Saturday, that's for sure. Saturday afternoon maybe, but
well, once it's over and the pain is out of the way. Look, can't be as bad what's going to happen to Jacksonville.
What's that?
It can't be as bad what's going to happen to Jacksonville, and Trevor Lawrence made it 10 times worse. You see what he said?
No, I didn't.
He doesn't think Arrowhead can be as loud as Jacksonville.
Yikes. All right. Well, Trevor, you are
a dumb fuck.
Oh, boy. Oh, golly. Okay.
For Antonio Slater. Jack Ramsey.
It's Jack Ramsey. It's Antonio Slater. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell a friend. Tell your friend's friend. Tell a friend's friend's friend. Tell a friend's dog. Tell Carlos Correa. Tell the medical guy that said his ankle was messed up. Tell Derek Falvey about our podcast. Tell Steve Cohen about it. Tell everyone. Tell everybody you know.
We'll make sure not to lose this one. I will make sure not to lose this one.
There we go. It's a guarantee.
Read my new articles.
And read them. But that's all we got.
If you read my articles, I get to go to St. Lucie more often.
So be it.
Help a man out. LFGM, baby.
As always, LFGM.